Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing amazing. Today, I have a great guest that I'm going to be having on here in a second. His name is David Richter. He not only does similar stuff that we do, like we love Profit First, and I've shared this many times in our group and on our show of how Profit First just really changed things for us as business owners. And now I work a lot with, again, Profit First, infinite banking, all of that stuff. But we talk a lot to real estate investors. We talk a lot to people who are in that world, especially right now. And David Richter actually wrote the book for Profit First and real estate investors. Literally, it's titled Profit First for real estate investors. He's active real estate investor, has been essential in closing over 850 deals over the last 7 years, which include wholesaling, turnkey, the BRRRR method, which if you guys don't know about the BRRRR method, it's a really awesome one. Owner finance, rentals, lease options, all these other kinds of ways. And while growing and building a real estate business from 5 deals a month to over 25 deals a month, he also realized that as much money was coming in, it was going right out the door. Who can feel that as a business owner? I know I can. When I had the coffee shop, oh my gosh, it was always happening. And I was like, man, these guys are making more than me. So he's been there. And so with this unique opportunity of being in every seat as a real estate investor, he founded a company that helps them called Simple CFO. And he helps real estate companies completely turn around from going out of business to building cash flow reserves, which we love as Profit First specialists, by using the Profit First cash flow system. And again, he wrote that Profit First for real estate investors. This is one of the books I recommend, as well as the Profit First book and the Bank on Yourself book. And he has some amazing goals. I'll let him say that. But thanks for joining us, guys. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Hey, David, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Brandon. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you got into this. Like, I mean, you probably didn't wake up living and breathing Profit First. How did that connect?
No, so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in college. That's what got me started on the real estate journey. And then you kind of told that background a little bit, working with the company where we grew and scaled it to a pretty hefty size, residential real estate business. And that was where one of the seats, the many seats I sat in, was the finance seat and the finance head there. And with zero experience at that time, I didn't have a background in accounting or anything like that, or as a CPA, but I dove in with the CPA during that year and really got to know the numbers. And up to that point, after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I had read a lot of financial books and business books, and I just like to consume those types of books. So no, I wasn't born with Profit First, but I like the Dave Ramsey type methodology, like the cash, the envelope method and that resonated with me. So I really like that type of stuff. But that's where I saw in that business where we were doing so many deals. And it's like, why are we doing 25, 30 deals a month if we're not going to make anything at the end of the day, where literally salespeople and other people, like staff members, were making more than the owner was making? And it's like, why are you doing this? Like, why keep this going? And it's like, we're running negative some of the months. It's just a big old headache for him. And it was like, what's going on here? So that was kind of the first eye-opening of, even though you look successful, it doesn't mean that you actually are. And like from the actual numbers, because you can, when you go out to like an event, Brandon, like they say, oh, we're doing this amount of deals, or like we're closing this, or we have this many rentals or whatever. But until you sit down with them and their numbers, we don't know. Are they really profitable? Or are they like bleeding, profusely from stage, but no one can really see that? So that's where I knew that there was a big epidemic in the real estate world and just small business world to shore that up. And that's where there were several other stories in between there, but a mentor gave me the book, or recommended the book Profit First to me, because I told him, like, hey, I want to help real estate investors with their finances, with their money. And that's where I got, indoctrinated with it. He said, read this book. I think you're really going to like it. I read it. Of course, I loved it. 10 pages of notes, read it all in one evening and said, this is a great framework. So no, I didn't wake up with it, but I definitely, once I read it, it definitely woke something inside of me to say, this is such a great framework for the actual entrepreneur to keep more actual money in their pocket.
Well, and you said that like as well, like people are saying things like I'm doing podcast guesting and they're like, you bring in $1 million. I was like, I know a lot of businesses that bring in $1 million, but that doesn't mean crap to me. If you're not able to keep some or majority of it. And I've had Amazon sellers who are like, oh yeah, I'm $1 million revenue that I'm generating, right? And they aren't keeping anything. They're broke in other ways. I was like, well, basically, you're a slave for Jeff Bezos, free labor, and all of that. And so sometimes that big metrics, or like net worth, right? Sometimes is not always the big way. So having that system that make and keep money is a different thing, right? How do you help people to get past that hurdle of, man, I need to be big. I need to have 100 deals. Like, how do you help them figure out maybe you need 5 profitable deals and that's it?
Right. That's such a great question. There's a guy that came to us early on when I started this business who was at that point. He was trying to scale up and really going hard at it. His wife started working in the business, but then she was stressed out. She started actually having seizures because it was so stressful. Like, it was horrible, like a horrible situation. And he's like, I'm done, basically. Like, I don't want this anymore. It got so bad. Not everyone gets to that bad place, that bad of a place. But he lost a ton of money that year. He was like upside down. It was just very, very bad situation. And so the first thing we did when we sat down with him was asking him, what do you need? Like, what do you need just to get you out of this hole? And what do you need to live? Let's not take into comparison what other people are doing at the events you're going to, or what you think sounds fun or awesome. Let's just get you to where you need to be. That's like the reality check, because that's where the fact that you even asked this question, that people are just always trying to get more and more and more, but that doesn't necessarily mean more in their pocket. It just means more headaches, more expenses, more everything else, but the one thing they're going after, and it's that time and money freedom. And that's where with this guy, we had to sit him down and say, what do you need? It turned out instead of doing like 3 deals a month like he was trying to do, he only needed 5 deals a year, like to get him out of his rat race and like his expenses to pay for he had a small staff to pay for all of his staff. He had some rentals too that brought in some passive income that helped. And like with those passive rentals and with just 5 deals instead of trying to grow, he was able to get out of the rat. And then the last few years, he's done 5 or 6 deals. Hasn't had to have his wife work, hasn't had to do any of that, and this year he did enough deals by April to take off the rest of the year if he wanted to, because he just knew what he needed and not what other people were saying, this is where you should go, or this is how big you should get. And it was really helping him understand his priorities. He has small children at home too. Like, he's like, I want to spend time with them. Well, guess what? This year in 2022, while we're recording this, he said I could take off the entire summer with them if I wanted to. Like, any other deals I do are icing on the cake. And that's what people really want. They really want the options and freedom. And they think that getting bigger is going to solve that, but bigger doesn't. Better does. So that's what we try and get people to understand.
As I do like financial analysis with people, I'm always asking, goals of what's your goals? What's your, and again, I'm trying to solve problems, right? With life insurance and with annuities or with other things, and asking people, what's your goals? Well, I want to get into real estate because everybody else is in real estate, and kind of sometimes that happens. And then the other thing is they say, okay, so going in, right? I'm sorry, I'm having like Facebook problems, I think. So it's trying to do this at the same time. So they ask me, my goal is to have 100 doors, right? And I'm like, why do you want 100 doors? Well, because this will bring this amount of income, right? Or something. I want this $100 per door, and this and I'm looking, and I'm like, yeah, but you have 22% interest credit card on this thing to get that door, and maybe that's not the maybe you need 10 doors. I don't know. But asking the question of why and that overall goal, and each job is different, I guess. So how do you figure out, like, real estate is not just, hey, I'm in Airbnb world, and flip world. Some people just put it into all one bucket, almost like we do with other things. How do you how are you able to educate them if they're in like owner financing or something like that? Like, what do you do? How do you talk to them in different ways?
And when you say talk to them, is that for their goals or for what they're wanting to get out of their business, or if you want them to go to different exit strategies or revenue streams?
It might be all of it. Like sometimes they're thinking, I want to do this, but you're like learning, hey,
That
what
makes
they're
sense.
trying to do is not the same as over here.
Right. It's
Um,
usually doing an analysis of what are you doing right now? Because I love what you were talking about right there. You were like, what's your goal? And then they give you this arbitrary number that they think is a good goal, but they're not the numbers people. They're the
yeah,
deal
yeah,
maker. They're the deal hunters. So they've never sat down to really analyze what it takes. And most of them have never run a business before. They're
yeah,
the business owner, but like that's a whole different set of skills than being the pie maker. Like you have to be the business owner, the shop owner, or the real estate investor who's actually the business owner there.
yeah,
And so when you get them to look at the numbers and say, here's what you're making on each owner finance deal, or here's what you're making on your wholesale deal, or here's what you're doing on your fix and flip properties, like what's the time frame that it takes you to close the gap between when you get it under contract and when you actually have an influx of cash? And is it recurring? And are we going after a recurring model like the passive type investments of rentals, lease
yeah,
options, owner finance, or do we need to build some active income first? And is wholesale doing well? And even though you're making more on your fix and flips, you're making 50,000 versus 20,000 in wholesaling. How long is it taking you? How
yeah,
much more expenses, headache, and time does it take on the fix and flip? So it's like categorizing by return on investment and return on time to say, what's going on here, and what are you good at that you can replicate with the least amount of headache and putting the most amount of money in your pocket, and being able to actually have that real revenue, like in profit first terms of putting the most real revenue into
yeah.
your system.
And as you talk to people, what do you think is sometimes the biggest hangups with the system with profit first? Because there's always, yeah, but I know, but this happens all the time. So what
Oh
is
yeah.
the biggest obstacle that you see to, I'll call it the number blocks? How do you help them overcome those number blocks?
So a lot of people, it's just getting started, just actually starting, opening up those accounts. Like you got to
Mhm.
get them over that hurdle of like, hey, let's at least get to square one here and separate stuff out. And
Yeah,
then another thing is when they do start setting that up, this is something we see when people come to us before, like they've set up profit first before they've come to us. And then we've also seen this with people that we're working with is they like to steal from themselves.
right.
Just because you start putting in a system that creates a good habit does not mean you automatically, get that habit. So
Yeah,
that's where it has to be built over time. So it's like, oh shoot, we put too much over here in this bank account. Like we got to transfer money, or there's a great deal coming up. I'm just going to empty all my accounts. And, like that'll be fine. I'll put it all back, like once it sells in a couple months. And it's like that never happens. They never do that. It's like thinking better. That's helping them protect them from themselves from the very habits that put them in the positions of
right.
stress, anxiety, and whatnot. So I'd say that's another big one is just helping to build those habits and breaking some of the bad habits that they have in the business.
Do you what I do in my like system, and I use life insurance, and I'm kind of instead of with the infinite banking thing, um, instead of going and asking for other people's money, it just happens to be my money in another business side,
Yep.
personal side. And what I do is, if I will loan the business money, I have a honest banking that I'm putting in. So I'm overpaying my loan to myself.
Yeah.
Like, I'm calling it honest banking, right? And I have my honest banking kind of amount. How do you help when they start doing that? How do you help them with honest banking?
That's a great one because a lot of people, when they start that process
Mhm.
of the honest banking, they have to have some sort of system set up. It's almost like treating yourself like you would a private lender or someone,
Yeah.
like a note, a document, like making sure that you're setting it up like you would for anyone else, because I know you want to be fiscally responsible with other people's money. Like, that's a huge thing, of course, but it's
Mhm.
like, this is your future or your children's future, or like your legacy that you're leaving. So we got to make sure that we put these controls and habits in place. So if we're going to set that up, we're going to make sure, okay, how often is it paid back? Can we make it automatic,
Yep.
like to this, and, doing the things that will help them as much as possible, put it back to where it needs to go. Because we've also seen people too, like in the, if they have money that's in an account specifically to buy deals, and they're
Yep.
like, okay, I bought a deal with that money. At least they had the fortitude enough to open an account specifically for that purpose. They spend the money on it, but then it's like, okay, how do we track that it's going to come back to that account for the next deal or
Yeah.
whatnot? And
Yeah.
it's like, you have to be honest with yourself, because if you're not, and if we don't have a system, and if we can automate it as much as possible, that's what we need to do. So that way the owner's not even thinking about, oh, like, I hope that gets taken care of, or, setting a
Right.
reminder, a sticky note on their desk, that gets lost or ruined. It's like, no, we've got to have a system in place in order to make sure that you can be as honest as you can with yourself and with the money that's flowing through your business.
I kind of talk to some of my clients and I say, treat yourself like 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 on one end, you are going to be a loan shark that if you don't do this, they're going to come after with a baseball bat and break your
Right.
kneecaps, right? But also at the same time, knowing it's probably not going to happen. You're not going to break your own kneecaps.
Probably not.
But the credit card companies don't care, right? If you take this or that, there's repercussions, right?
Right.
We have to have that kind of mentality and almost feel like we're schizophrenic sometimes, of we're saying, all right, this hat's this hat, and then put this hat on. So that way you're thinking strategically about both places.
And a lot of people don't like putting on those different hats. So you might need a brand in your business to be
Right.
that other hat for you, to say, here's the system, or I'm going to check in on you every once in a while. Like, that's what we do as well too. It's like making sure that if you don't want to be schizophrenic, then you have someone there to help and guide you
Yeah.
during that time, because that's what the true magic is in working with someone like us, like you, Brandon, or like us, is that the accountability that's there
Yeah.
to say, if you want to be honest, what's the best way you could be honest is tell someone about this and then have them hold you accountable to that. So whether it's your money, or whether it's like, I need to be honest with someone about a struggle I'm going through, or
Yeah.
whatnot, that's the best way, is telling someone else and having them, especially if they're an expert in that area where you're not. Because if you're the deal hunter, you're not the finance person. You're not that person, and you don't know what systems might be available to set up to make sure you're not
Right.
stealing from yourself, or, lying to yourself. So it's like, you might need someone like that in your life to help you.
Yeah. And I again think about it as I built the profit first system, even without and I have a business partner that both of us and are in this together, and what I love is I can look at my profit first system and be able to know, can I do this within my OPEX?
Yep.
Pretty much right away without any question, because that's holding me accountable without even talking to her, because the system helps. But you can always go around the system if you want. Anybody can do that. That's the way. Sometimes that's why you need a person in place. So then she will then know, if I took money from there, she's going to know, right?
Right.
The system will
Exactly.
align.
And that's where you don't want to get back to right where you were. I talk about in the book here, the real estate rat race. And like a lot of people go from their W-2 job, jump into real estate and get into their own rat race there. And just instead of working 40 hours in a rat race for someone else, you're working 80 hours, making less and in another rat race where you're living deal to deal, month to month. And that's where once you start getting this system in place, you don't want to go back to those habits that put you in that place. That's why it's not just about, oh, well, of course, I'm not going to break my own kneecaps or break my thumbs like Rocky Balboa. It's like we're going to make sure that we don't have you slide back into that position of fear, anxiety, not being able to take the vacations, not being able to do the things you've always wanted to do. That's the true value of that side, is being able to say, you don't have to go back there if you don't want to. Like, you don't have to slide back there, because we can help you stay on the right track.
Well, and another thing I've been thinking about is, as people have been going into real estate, have you, and again, I was thinking about this morning, because we did this whole money thing. Everybody was talking about how awesome Dave Ramsey is. And I realized that one of my frustrations was, I'm a business owner, right? And so from a business owner, some of this Dave Ramsey stuff is hard, because I'm like, oh yeah, get the company match. That's not really possible, because I am the company, right? And take money from the man. I told this to my wife when we were running the coffee shop business. I was like, this is really interesting, because I am the man now, literally. And this isn't as fun. But like the idea of bad debt and all of that is important. The Dave Ramsey envelope system, that's so awesome. But then how do you switch and say, well, maybe that's an employer mindset thinking? How do you transition to maybe the Robert Kiyosaki and, let's leverage everything under the sun? Like, how do you marry those two within the profit first system? Because I think they're both amazing and they both can be bad.
And I feel like what we talked about before we got on the live was that the profit first system almost marries those two mindsets together, where you've got Robert Kiyosaki, who preaches all day long, pay yourself first, like make sure you're taken care of. And you've got Dave Ramsey, on the other side saying, here's a system to make sure you've got all your expenses in order and everything in order. And it's almost like, that's why I like profit first kind of marries those, to say, we're going to put every dollar in its proper place. At least, because business owners, come on, we know that most business owners at some point in their life has given the shoebox of receipts to their CPA. Like, they don't care about the software. They don't care about the tracking. They just care about the money in their pocket. And that's why you're going to have to manage the money no matter what. So you've got to have a system for that. But as far as leveraging, like on the Dave Ramsey side, he's like, all debt is bad. Like everything, that's an absolute. And come on, that's a pretty hard absolute, because on the other side, you've got real estate investing, which you can literally take a loan out to make money with, that you don't have to lose sleep at night over, because there's a plan for that money to make the money. Usually with credit card debt that most people get into, it's like, I'm going to spend this and I hope that I can pay this off one day, either with my business accounts or on your personal life. I hope I can just pay this off slowly over time. Like, that's a huge difference in mindset than, I'm going to buy a property for a specific amount and I'm going to put work into it, or I'm going to rehab it, or I'm going to, turn it into a rental or fix and flip it or wholesale or whatnot. That's a totally different mindset than the credit card type debt or that revolving type debt, where you're just praying, like, I hope I can get this. And that's where I feel like Dave Ramsey speaks to that audience of, they're just the ones that, have some of those bad habits in place.
Right.
And Robert Kiyosaki says, like, okay, that's 101. I'm so proud of you for doing that, like getting out, but I want you to leverage to make more and use the good habits that you've put in place to make you more money. And that's where it's like, if you have a profit first system, it leverages both of that, especially in the real estate world, because in real estate, you could literally set up an account to say, this is my down payment money, like to leverage, or like, this is the money that I'm going to keep in this account so I could show other people, like private lenders or banks, that I'm fiscally responsible. So that way they see I have cash on hand and they're going to be able to lend me more.
Yeah.
because I think that's the big difference is, and especially with profit first, Mike talks about in the original book, like, and I talk about in mine, is that profit account, you can start knocking down that bad debt. Like if
Right.
you have the bad revolving debt, that's one of the things you can start taking down. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go out, especially in real estate, and not looking for the other people's money or whatnot to do the deals and to be able
Right.
to secure them, because you can leverage. So that's kind of how we marry it, and how I feel like profit first almost straddles both sides of that fence and says, yes, we want to eliminate your bad debt, but we also want to have you have cash in place so you could go out and buy more properties and be able to
Right.
grow your wealth, as too.
Well, and I think as well, like some of that is, you know, Dave Ramsey, whenever he was saying some of this, interest rates on houses were a bit higher
Yeah.
back in the day. Maybe that was true. You want to pay off the debt if it was 14%, right?
Yeah.
And it changes. And I tell people, like, if the interest rates on mortgages change, maybe the answer changes. I don't know what the future holds.
Right.
And if the interest rate on a mortgage was 15%, pay it off as soon as possible.
I
Maybe.
would say too that we've worked with some investors, or I've interviewed some investors on our podcast or whatnot, that say we're Dave Ramsey fans and we don't like debt at all, and they've built their portfolio almost debt free. It's
Yeah.
taken them longer, but that's what they were comfortable with. And you know what? They're in a great position. You
Yeah.
know what? I'm not going to knock that against them. Did they grow as fast as they could? No. But that wasn't for them. That's the whole thing too, is just because you want to build a big business, what are you really trying to get out of it? That's when you were asking me, Brandon,
Yeah.
about, like, what do you tell people that just want to grow or what? And it's like, well, do you really want to grow, or what's the end result? Do you want to follow Dave Ramsey's model and pay everything off? It's going to take you a lot longer, like
Right.
usually, unless you're in real estate and you're like got a wholesale deal, and you're just using all your active income to buy the passive properties, outright. But that's another story for another time. But it's like, where are you on your journey, and what would make you sleep well at night? I think that's what we're all looking for, is that we want to
Yeah.
sleep well at night, like how we treat other people, what money we have in the bank, what debt we have, and how we're, like how we're doing overall. So it's like, what will help you with that? Is that leveraging and just trying to amass as much as possible? If it is, then do it smart. Put profit first in place. Make sure that you're not going out of business while you do that. But if you're on the other side and you're like, you know what? I don't want any debt. Set up profit first and make sure that you're paying down everything all the time.
Right.
And guess what? You can have your cake and eat it too with that system, because it's like, what works for you. But we're going to, at least at the bare minimum, if you're going to leverage yourself to the hilt, we're going to make sure you still have the margin of profitability, like that you still have the cash, that you're still being smart with your money, that you're not over leveraging yourself, like to the hilt, and like making sure that you have that margin of safety no matter what. So that's why I like that too.
Well, and whatever you want to accomplish, right? So some people will say, don't buy in this market right now because it's crazy, right? We used our life insurance to buy our personal residence, and some people would say, don't buy a personal residence that you live in, rent there, whatever. I don't know, but we did 20% down because we wanted the cash flow kind of position. And now we're looking to maybe buy a building for our office space, right? Because I'm spending several thousand in OpEx to rent. And I'm like, well, that's not smart. Maybe we need to change that. But I didn't start there, and as we evolve and build and building the business and life that we want. And again, reverse engineering, right? And some people start, with a rich uncle and a relative that they're able to do amazing, better deals, right? Maybe because they had a leg up or something. But I've been thinking a lot on, don't compare yourself to other people, but yourself yesterday, right? And profit first system is a really good system to be able to say, okay, are we on track? And percentage based. So then you can say, well, let's increase our owner's pay. Not by 50%, but you do those 1% adjustments. And as you do that over time, that becomes pretty awesome.
Yeah, it does.
And the feeling of security and stability, regardless of what happens in the market, is amazing. Whether life insurance, because some people like they hate what I do and say like that's stupid, but for me, it's about stability, right? And that's a building of a foundation, right? And I love the system that you're putting forth is saying, hey, it's not about the rate of return. It's building a stable system.
Right.
So then you can dominate even more. But our worldview is saying, well, go out there, spend as much as you can, risk as much as you can. And then 2008 hits and all these people are left screwed.
Exactly.
And I am kind of worried about that because there are these ideas of upside down pyramids. But if you have the right cash flow system, maybe infinite banking system, and other systems in place and guides to help you, it's amazing what can happen.
Exactly. That's where if you have the principles, if you get down the principles of building wealth and turn those into habits, that's where you could go through 2008 and 9. Maybe you do get, you do take a hit or you do take something. Number one, it probably won't be as bad. But number two, you'll be confident in yourself that, hey, I can build this back because I've got wealth habits. I've got the wealth principles as a part of my system to be able to do this again. So I think that's the other piece there. It's that psychological effect of even if the market were to tank, I know I won't be hit as hard as I would be if I was just leveraging everything with just the spray and pray method, I'm hoping it works out, versus I've got these systems and habits and principles in place.
Yeah. So what is, as you've been dealing with this and seeing, I don't know, the real estate market go nuts, what's been your biggest or challenge that you're seeing real estate people, investors in general, facing right now? It's April 29th, 2022, and you have to date it because next year or in 2 months it might be a different story.
Right.
What are you saying right now to people?
So right now, interest rates are going back up a little bit, and we're seeing a little bit more inventory in some places. But one of the things that I hear constantly is just, leads all the time. That's even in good, bad markets. It's like that's the one thing people struggle with is consistency in their lead flow. So making sure that you have that, and you know how you can even go down that road of knowing if you have the best lead flow or where to get it consistently is usually looking at the other side. What did I spend on these marketing channels? Which one actually gave me returns? And should I pour more gasoline on certain areas and stop in certain areas? Like stop certain marketing channels. So that's one big thing is everyone's always like, there's a million real estate investors out there in each market now, it seems like. So the competition's more. That's usually what I hear in those types of, those types of events or whatnot. The other big thing is like get started. If you haven't started real estate investing, like get out there and take some action. Even now in the competition and everything, there is abundance of deals or people that you can connect with that big investors won't be able to. You'll be able to talk with your neighbor down the street who's looking to sell, but they can't sell for their top dollar with a realtor because they inherited that house or it needs work or whatnot. And maybe you could provide the cash solution or a creative deal or whatever. It's going to take you doing that deal versus someone else because you have a connection with someone that someone else doesn't. So get started. If you haven't started, that would be a couple of the key points. And that big challenge is usually, there's a lot of competition out there, but it's really just a factor of what marketing works for you and where do we put gasoline on the fire there.
So not just know your financial numbers is what I heard, but know your marketing numbers.
Yeah, those KPIs, those key performance indicators.
And knowing like the cost per lead. That's something I think about all the time of, what's my lead cost? How can I make more revenue? That's why I'm doing YouTube, right? As I do YouTube, maybe it increases lead source and YouTube might pay me for us doing a video, right?
Yeah.
And it works. And so thinking about that and going from an employer mindset to a business owner mindset is very different. And then also not being scared about the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too many people are scared
Yep.
about it, or they jump in and they are overly optimistic.
Yep.
I'm really worried with this great resignation that happens, and it's a great opportunity for us profit first people, because people are leaving their jobs, saying, "Oh, I'm going to leave this job to go be an entrepreneur," or what I call entrepreneurs. And there's a difference between a person who's a entrepreneur or wants a real estate investor, or I guess you could call it that,
Yep.
where they'll talk all day long of what they're planning to do, and somebody who actually does it, right?
Right.
And I will tell you, as you guys are listening to this, you will fail, right? There will be failure in your future, to some degree, in any business. The trick is getting up, knowing the systems. So then, as you know, and probably as you see it, profit first, you're able to get up quicker because you've seen the failure and say, all right, that's not right. Let's move.
Yes.
Um,
That's so true. Fail often, fail fast, fail forward. It's people who you look up to have just failed on bigger stages than you and have failed at bigger levels. Like that's really what it is. I fail all the time. Like you see the book there, but you see, like it took 18 months to get it out the door, and like the grueling hours, like behind the scenes, and like
right.
sometimes like writing it and then having your editor say like, we got to cut this chapter out. It sucks. It's like, it's those types of things that you have to be willing to face,
Yep.
that will help you get to where you want to be. So yeah, I could preach on that all day, but that's really good. Fail often, fail fast, fail forward.
So thanks again for being a part of this. I don't want to take up all of your time for sure, but I wanted to show you guys, like, this book is amazing. I listened to it on Audible. One of the cool things, if you see on Audible,
There it is.
yeah. So one of the cool things is they said, after I finished it, they said, you might also like, and it showed the Nelson Nash Infinite Banking
Nice.
underneath. I was like, is that because they know what I'm doing, or is that really? Anyway, I thought that was really interesting that it at the bottom it says, because you like this, here's this book you should like.
Very
I
cool.
thought that was interesting to see. But everyone, if you are in real estate, which I feel like at this point everybody and their grandmother is a real estate investor, or thinks they are, but the question to be asking is, you might all be in real estate, but are you in a profitable real estate? Are you a profitable real estate investor? And or are you just playing it, right? So if you are questioning this at all, questioning your numbers, not understanding what to do, well, of course, follow this channel, right? Go like and subscribe this video, and share this video with a friend, and go, of course, read Profit First. Follow David Richter. He has a business that is Simple CFO Solutions. Let me see if I have the banner. I thought I did. It's Simple CFO Solutions, right?
Yep. SimpleCFOsolutions.com.
So go here and reach out to him and someone at his team, because again, I've worked with them, and go check them out. And I send people over there often, because there's a lot of people who are playing real estate investor, but are they actually real estate investors? That's a different thing. Know your numbers, right? And reverse engineer. So anything you want to leave our guests today with, or tomorrow as they listen to it?
So if you have not heard of Profit First before, or never have heard of that, one thing I could leave you with no matter what is set up a bank account that is separate from all your other accounts, even in your personal life, if you don't have a business. So if you have a business, open up a different business account. If you have personal accounts, open up the personal account, name it Profit, and transfer 1% of all your income into there to start building the wealth habit. So that's what I would say. One actionable item you could take away from here to start at least the mindset and the habits of getting into the Profit First methodology and mindset, and giving you the actual results you want to see. So there you go. There's my parting words.
Awesome. So guys, if you've listened to this, pause and go set up one account. Easy to do, 1%. Easy, 1% adjustments.
There you go.
Cool. Well, thanks again for having us or being on the show. And if you guys like this show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review. And if you want more of this kind of stuff, put it in the comments. Let us know. So thanks for having us, and we will talk to you later.